Pokemon has always had one very big competitor. No, I'm not talking about Palworld. It's the original rival Digimon that's been following in its footsteps since the 90s. Yes, throughout the years, Digimon has definitely been left in the dust, but with the release of their new game Storytime Strangers, hype is at an all-time high. And it even managed to hook me in, someone who doesn't know anything about Digimon. I only know there's some kind of poop creature and that this guy is named Agumon. So to ease myself into the series, I decided to play Pokemon Digimon Emerald. It replaces all 353 Pokemon with some of the most beloved Digimon, and along with it, a ton of quality of life changes and other things, like some of their custom moves they use in the anime and games that have been given all properties to work inside of a Pokemon game. A lot of these creatures can also evolve up to 5 or 6 times and go through drastic appearance changes that differ quite a lot from what we know in Pokemon. And today we'll be searching for some of the weirdest ones because I'll be 100% completing Pokemon Digimon Emerald. So let's turn ourselves into data and transfer straight into the world of Digimon. Our character gets uploaded with the name Zwiggo inside of a place called the Emerald Server, a vast tropical sector of the digital world filled with islands, jungles, and data reefs. Pokemon trainers are now called tamers, and we're about to start our very first day. But hold on to your seat because today's sponsor is Illustral's Awaken, a game I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to love. Why? Because it's being built by two of the Pokemon community's biggest creators, and you might know them as A-Drive and Shady Penguin. They already have a popular card game named Illustrals, and now they're turning that into a 2.5D pixel art monster catching RPG. Now in Awakened, you will be able to bond with one of 8 elemental spirits, which will accompany you on your adventure throughout their ancient Greek mythology inspired world. This wonderful place is filled with temples, ancient divine gods, and over 100 Illustrals that you can catch, evolve, and battle with in their super unique combat system where your health and energy are the same resource, which makes every move a risky play. And their Kickstarter is live right now until November 7th, and backing the game is also the only way for you to get alpha and beta access, exclusive rewards, and even a chance to become an NPC or caster in the game depending on how much you pledge. So what are you waiting for? Hit that link down below to support Illustral's Awakened before it's too late. Me and my family just transferred to the Litterroot node, where we live with one other family, the Birches. Their father is a Digimon expert and is the one that called me here in the first place to research them. But we won't be doing this all alone, as his daughter May will also be joining us. But our first meeting with Professor Birch didn't go as planned, as he got attacked by a Digimon that seemed to be glitching out. And to help him out, he gave me the choice of 3 different starter Digimon: Koromon, Bukamon, and Tanemon. I also never really understood why every Digimon needs to have Mon at the end of its name, so I bet you that I'll be saying it over 1,000 times in this video. But back to the starter choice. The only one that was familiar to me at the time was Koromon, so of course I picked him and beat Pagumon with Bubble Blows, which by the way is a normal type attack, not a water one. But as I said before, nothing makes sense in the digital world, so why don't we bring the professor back to the lab, beat up his daughters, Bukamon, and start our journey as a fully fledged tamer now that we have our Digidex and Digiballs. I promised Birch that I'm going to fill this Digidex out to the max so that we can not only complete his, but also my own dream. And with those famous last words, I went out on my first ever catching spree on the first 3 routes. These starting areas consisted mostly of really cute Digimon like Bodamon, Punimon, and Chibomon. But this honestly varied quite a bit because we also had things like Bombmon that would explode in my face if I didn't manage to capture it, and my personal favorite so far, the electric steel type Metal Koromon. These creatures also have their own natures which buff and nerf their stats, and abilities that fit in pretty well with what they're trying to be. But on Route 102 and 103, there would of course be even more mons for me to get. These consisted of Pichimon, the Thundercloud Mokumon, the little kissy face Uramon, the edible Gummymon, Botamon who would work like Abra, teleporting away if you didn't capture it, the Digi variant of Ditto Poyomon would also be here. In the meantime, we have reached Petalburg City, where we have a meeting with our dad. We learn a little bit about his job, which is being a data terminal master. There's 8 of those across the region, and he's the 5th one. They are mainly strong elite tamers who maintain the stability of each data terminal, a key node that regulates the server's environment and Digimon's habitats. Each one of them specializes in a specific data type which represents the ecosystem they protect, and we'll have to challenge and defeat them to prove our synchronization and control over my Digimon partners. My dad in particular loves to help out struggling newbie trainers like Wally here, and he tasks me with helping him out to get his first ever starter Digimon. And after doing exactly that, we thank our father for the advice and add a second objective to our checklist: becoming the strongest Digimon trainer in this entire Digiverse. But in order to become that, we need to have access to every single one of them. So on round 104, I started capturing more of them, starting out with Otamamon, a little axolotl that somewhat reminded me of Wooper and Mudkip, so I immediately loved its design. We would also get this little egg-sheep dog Xiaomon, a little seed called Nyokimon, the cute fox Viximon, the wannabe Woobat Petitmon, and lastly the cute little devil dog Jijimon. But this meant we had to move on to the Dark Forest, where way stronger Digimon resided and ambushed me behind every corner. But I kept my cool and added all of them to the Digidex. That's how I got Kunemon, Puroromon, Motimon, Datirimon, and lastly Minomon. But this was also the place where we met up with the evil Team Aqua. Their main goal was to hijack data streams to expand water-based territories, which they claim will restore the balance to the Digimon landscape by cooling down overheated servers that corrupt Digimon. This might sound noble, but when you realize that they're stealing and putting other people in danger, it isn't as great anymore. Which is why I helped out this data protector from getting his code stolen. I'd be lying if I said this Team Aqua grunt got defeated on the very first attempt, because he had a very strong Digimon named Starmon, a water electric type with the Volt Absorb ability, which would basically shred my entire team with water guns since I was so under-leveled. Eventually, we were able to take it down with a combination of poison, smoke screens, and supersonics. Because you know the old saying, if brute force doesn't work, try status. I don't think anybody else has ever said that before, but we're rolling with it. This encounter didn't only fend off Team Aqua, but also started a crisis that we would definitely have to prepare for. So to bolster our own strength, we made it to Rosboro and started capturing Digimon on the next route. This is where I captured Kapurimon, Chichimon, Wanyamon, and the Karambwan from RuneScape, Chikurimon. We also did our first 2 Digilutions, which got me Thundermon and the famous Agumon. We would then move on to the Rustorf Tunnel Dungeon, where I would capture Upamon, Dorimon, Kurimon, and also the Stuff of Nightmares Vilemon, and another creature I really liked, Ghostmon. Now that we had all of these, I had to build a team that would be able to take on the first Terminal Warden, Roxanne. I knew she was a geologist programmer who maintained the stability of the Emerald server's subterranean data, which basically just means she likes rocks. So her Digimon probably represent this too. So I did tons of evolutions that got me Kokuwamon, the walking electrical outlet, but also Guilmon, Budmon, Hagurumon, Floramon, the little cute duck Chatmon, and also the little dragon Dracomon, and one of my personal favorites, maybe even my favorite, Parasaurmon. Because like most guys, I really like dinosaurs. And if you know anything about Digimon and even have a favorite Digimon, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your stories and why you may ended up loving that particular Digimon. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe as well, because we are so close to 600,000 subscribers, a very big milestone that I'd love to hit before the end of the year. Now let's get on to that Roxanne fight. She led off with a stone rabbit named Gotsumon, and since it's a rock ground type, our axolotl can one-shot it with a stun bubble. Her next team member would be this awesome Drake named Lavorvumon, but I guess it's pretty stinky since it doesn't like foam showers, as my duck was able to defeat it with 2 of those, leaving it with only Skull Baluchimon, or what I like to call it, Budget Toon Summon Skull from Yu-Gi-Oh! Parasaurmon would be clutch here, using Palsy Sweet, a low base power grass type move to paralyze it, and then affecting it with a Leech Seed to chip it down while swapping through different Digimon until eventually Floramon finished it off with a Bullet Seed, which would reward me with the Rock Data Seal, which shows off that I've mastered the rock type Digimon. But our victory would be interrupted by Team Aqua, who just stole some valuable data from Devon Corp. They stole something called the Devon Code, and while we don't know exactly what those codes are for, they can be used in the wrong hands. And along the way, they also took Mr. Briny's Digimon hostage so that they would be be able to get away without any problems, but they locked themselves up inside of Rustorf Tunnel, which gave me the chance to defeat them so we could get the codes back. This gave me an audience with the director of the Dervin Corporation, who not only upgraded my Digidevice with a communication feature, but also gave me a new mission. We had to deliver a letter to his son Steven Stone, a data archaeologist that explores abandoned code ruins across the digital world, in search of ancient ultra-rare mineral data that powers up Digimon's Digivolutions. He should be somewhere on the Dewford cluster, so with all of this new information, we agreed to the mission and end up running into May just before leaving Rustboro. She had been Digi-evolving quite a few of her creatures as well, and wanted to compare our power levels in a battle, so we ended up giving her one. Not that it was really a fight because early game Dragon Rage goes brr, but we did see the new evolution of our starter Gomamon. After saying goodbye, we would end up at Mr. Briney's house, who would sail us through the digital sea. And after arriving in the Dewford cluster, we'd immediately enter the abandoned Granite Cave dungeon. Inside, I acquired the data of 3 new Mons, those being Bearmon, Gotsumon, and another really cool one, the Triceratops Monochromon. And at the end of the cave here, we meet Stone, hand him the very important letter, and learn that it was here to study some of the digital anomalies caused by Team Magma and Aqua. He isn't willing to lay out his research for me though, and instead gives me a data scanner module which will allow me to identify corrupted code. We also learned that this island is also home to the second data warden, Brawly. So in order to prepare myself for his battle, I stole a fishing rod that can only be used to capture one creature, the fighting fish Monbomon. So we added him to the Digidex and did 2 more evolutions that got me Dorumon and Wizardmon, and then I went on to challenge Brawly, who would specialize in training up his Digimon the physical way, by utilizing the raw power of fighting type Digimon. He would lead off with the masked fencer Kodomon, who didn't fare well against 2 wing attacks from my Vilemon. I would hit 1 more on his punching fox Gaomon before swapping out to Dorumon and finishing it off with a Hyper Dash, a stronger form of quick attack. But this would not work against his ace creature Bancho Mamemon. My attack would just bounce off due to its steel typing, and I'd be forced out into Guilmon, would be able to melt it down with a few Pyrospheres, which would not only net me the combat seal but also the ability to sail to the Slateport cluster. This is where we head straight to the Data Museum, a place where you can learn a lot about how the Emerald server was formed. But the reason we were here was to deliver the Devon codes to a scientist that was going to utilize it in one of his experiments. However, Team Aqua heard of this rumor and tried to take it away from us. So I showed them the power of Wizardmon's magical game and knocked out all of their fighting forces, which forced their leader Archie to reveal himself to me. He warns me that the overheated servers are going to cause the calamity of this Digimon world, and if he would obstruct his team's path again, things wouldn't end well for me. I wasn't really intimidated by his threats, so after he left, we completed our side mission and traveled to Data Route 110. This is where I would acquire the data of the Digimon with the best mohawk ever, Tsunemon, but also Gizemon and Tinkermon. And after seeing how strong Brawly's Pokemon really were, I proceeded to do the evolutions to get Gaomon and Kotemon. With these bad boys, I'd meet up with me again to test our strength, and Gotsumon was off to a great start, using magnitudes to shake up her Labramon, which would force her out into Mamemon. Here I'd proceed to send in my Ghostmon because this thing is a fighting steel type, and with a few raids of the Jack and a Shadow Sneak, I'd be up against her last team member Gomamon, who would use its fish powers to do major damage against my Gao and Kotemon, which meant I had to finish it off with my Triceratops' gaudy tusks. As a reward, May gave me another upgrade for my Digidevice, the Item Finder, which can obviously help me out with finding hidden useful items, and from there on out we moved on to Marvel City and its surrounding routes. This is where I perhaps captured the tiniest Digimon, Pusurimon, and the creature that causes Professor Birch's nightmares, Pagumon, who would then also embarrass Wally right in front of his uncle's nose by defeating his one and only Budmon with Pepper Breath, and with this defeat, we actually learned quite a lot about him. He's apparently gotten a condition called Data Desync Syndrome, which is caused by spending way too much time in the digital world without a stabilized Digidevice, which means he's physically very weak and his digital connection often glitches out. But he's still very passionate about becoming a tamer and hopes to one day become the strongest one, just like me. And so I wish him luck on that journey, but I don't have time to sympathize with him because we have to prepare for the next Warden Watson, a very energetic engineer tamer who specializes in reprogramming machine Digimon and using their electrical powers to stabilize the server's infrastructure. In short, we're going to be up against electric types. So we did a ton of evolutions that got me to register Flymon, Togemogamon, Gurimon, Gamamon, Gazimon, Demimeramon, Candlemon, and 2 really cool ones, Meramon the Flame Ghost and Devi Dragon the Devil Dragon, I guess. With these boys, I was super confident that Watson was going to be a cakewalk. So we challenged him and immediately set up the sun with Manemon's Drought ability. This would make his Fire Fist attack hit even harder and cause a burn on the opposing Thundermon that would result into him dying on the very first turn. My Spiky Hedgehog then one-shotted his Kokuamon with a 4x super effective Bulldoze. Rydramon would then get pierced by my Bee's deadly stings, and as the poison spread throughout his body, he wouldn't be standing for more than 2 turns. This left Watson with Philmon, the Electric Hedgehog, and with the power of my Devil's Red Eyes and 2 more of Gamamon's Dragon Rages, the battle would be won and I'd acquire the Spark Seal. And winning this battle would also unlock an entire new part of the Digiverse for us. This would also see me get a lot of new Digivolutions, like Demi-Vmon and Vmon, that just like Eevee can evolve into a plethora of different forms, the first one I discovered being X-Vmon, but I would also get another staple of the series, Gabumon, who would then turn into the Icy Tiger Garurumon, and we would also get Herismon, Philmon, and Kolamon. After this, we hit the road again and reached the Vulcan Node Terminal, a colossal volcano-shaped energy nexus built into the Emerald server's upper layers, and the molten data that flows through it powers the Fire and Earth Digimon habitats. However, we've heard some rumors that an evil team called Magma wants to overheat this area so more volcanic nodes spawn across the region, which would obviously disrupt the balance of the Digimon world. And while we do see a couple of their grunts hanging around, there's really not all that much we can do about it now. So instead, I focused on gathering more data for Digimon and captured Dracmon, Bakemon, Leolmon, Vorvamon, Sonarizamon, and I think one of the community favorites, Shoutmon. On the other side of the volcano, we were playing inside of the digital volcanic ash. This resulted into me getting Toy Agumon, but also required me to bring out my best chess skills to get Pawn Chessmon, and the last 2 we got here were Kalumon and Cutemon. And just after Fall Arbor, we also got one of the starters of the new Digimon game, Demi-Devimon, which I personally chose and am currently playing through the game with. So I was quite excited to see a familiar face. And the next mon we captured literally had a TV on top of his head. Or maybe it was his head. I don't know exactly, but I gathered this data, and we would then stumble upon a new location called Meteor Falls. It's said that this is where the first Digimon of the Emerald server were born, as they emerged from the fallen data that seeded life here. So obviously, I captured some of these ancient Digimon, and ended up with a disgusting slime named Numemon, a literal trash can named Garbamon that gives even Garbodor a run for his money, and lastly, 2 little fluff balls named Tokomon and Yaromon. But we also spotted Team Magma and Aqua here. The former had found a data meteorite that they're going to use to overwrite the heating systems inside of the volcano. And Team Aqua is obviously here to try and stop them and ask for my help in this pursuit. Since it's for the good of the world, I team up with the pirates for once and prepare my team for a very hard battle by getting the Digivolutions Chaosmon, Devimon, and Night Chessmon. When we arrive on top of the volcano with the molten data all flowing around us, we're able to stop Maxi just before he activates his device. He tries to explain that this is all for the good of the Digimon world, but it is clearly not, so I throw out my devil against his mummy and use a combination of Dark Void, Dream Eater, and Death Grip to knock it out and get the upper hand in the fight. His Arukenimon would then get defeated by some sword slashes and headbutts from my Knight and Vmon, which only left him with a little devil that we would easily free solid with Garurumon's Howl Blasters. And that's how it is. Another day, another victory for the OG. Team Magma and Aqua then went their separate ways, and I started to hike down the mountain. On my hike, I gathered the data of Golemon and then reached the Lava Ridge node. This place is the home of Flannery, the 4th Warden. She has basically inherited the control of the server's volcanic firewall, but she currently still struggles to control her own fiery passion, which often creates dangerous data breaches, so the only thing we can do is to try and calm her down so that doesn't happen again in the future. And to do that, we're going to have the biggest Digivolution session ever. So strap in because there's a lot of them to go over. We got Lalamon, Sunflowmon, Musiamon, Omekamon, Bomnanimon, Terriermon, Gargomon, Phantomon, the awesome Seadramon, Kabukimon, Renamon, Kyubimon, Labramon, Caesarmon, Lavorvomon, Tentomon, Kabuterimon, Leomon, Warmon, Stingmon, Fanbymon, Honeybymon, Checkmon, Star Sword Shoutmon, Tortomon, Armadillomon, Ankylomon, Andromon, Geckomon, EX Tyrannomon, Skull Knightmon, Grismon, Kumpiramon, Marin Chimeramon, Deputymon, Patamon, Angemon, Rarmon, Troopmon, Salamon, Gatomon, Kazemon, Gaogamon, Growlmon, Airdramon, Lady Devimon, Skullbaluchimon, and last but not least, someone probably all of you know, Greymon. Now we had a very big arsenal to choose from, and I created the perfect team to take on Flannery. She would start off with a Metal Mamemon, who got destroyed by a single Aqua Viper. Her next team member, Cubimon, would be defeated by a Hot Ore Claw and Water Crash. I then set up a Rain Dance and used another Wave Crash to take on the incoming Shadramon, which only left her with Dark Lizardmon, and while we could have easily Wave Crashed this thing too, I decided to give my Pyramid Turtle some action and bulldozed it to end off the battle. Luckily, this seems to have calmed her temper as well, so now we don't have to worry about digital viruses getting through the firewall. What we do have to worry about is our next Warden battle against our father, and for this I would once again be doing quite a few evolutions, like Lavogaritamon, Shogun Geckomon, Lilimon, Asuramon, Warumonzaemon, a literal snowman named Frigimon, the metallic tiger Saber Leomon, but also Baihumon, Angewomon, Toropiamon, Tuskmon, Kanoweismon, King Chessmon, and Miotismon. And with all of these registered, it was time to take on Norman. We knew he was responsible for keeping balance inside of the Emerald server, and this also gets reflected in the Digimon he uses, as he doesn't really use strong types and instead focuses on adaptability, aka normal type time, as he started off with this giant walking egg named Digitamamon, who would easily be cracked and eaten for breakfast once we heated it up with Shoutmon's Sun Sword, and then he would send out this big mouse with a claw or something on his back, so I easily squashed it with the Shogun sword of my masked fighter. My Saber Leomon would then tear his fluffy teddy bear apart, which left him with only Caesarmon. And while Lion vs Lion would have been a nice end to this fight, I knew my bear would have a way bigger chance of defeating a lion, so I sent in Grizzlymon and mauled it unconscious. This would not only get me the balance seal, but also the ability to serve on digital data, which in turn gave me access to tons of water-type Digimon. Inside of the ponds, I ended up finding Crabmon and Kamemon, and in the big digital sea, we analyzed Dolphmon. While sailing, I'd also stumble upon a data ghost chip that must have been caught into some kind of corrupted data wave. This place is creepy and glitches out a lot, but I didn't need to stay here long, as after capturing Katomon, I could already leave and move on to Watson again, who needed my help with a pretty important mission. As it turns out, there is a high-tech urban hub inside of the Emerald server called New Mauville, which acts as a center of digital transport and energy distribution. Now, something has gone wrong down there that has caused the system to fail, and he wanted me to reboot it so the rest of this world wouldn't get affected. So I made my way through, and at the end, I immediately saw the problem. There was a glitched boat that spawned on top of the generator, which caused it to shut down. So we removed it and turned everything back to normal. After this, we would unlock an entire new environment with new Digimon for us to capture, which is how we got Yokomon, Tapirmon, Mykomon, Impmon, Goblymon, Elekmon, and Nunimon. We also learned that there is a weather data center here, which is used to regulate the weather across the entire Digimon server. And now Team Aqua is trying to take it over so they can yet again try to swarm the rest of the world with digitized water. So I proceeded to get two new Digivolutions, Unimon and Ebidramon. With these, it would become incredibly easy to scare away Team Aqua, save all the other tamers inside, and even ended up getting a Datamon as our reward. We would then leave this place behind and head for the Fortree hub. Just before that, however, we would run into May, who had become quite the formidable trainer since last time we saw her, but definitely not formidable enough. As my unicorn shocked her line with some discharges, Mamemon could not handle a Lila shower, and last but not least, her starter Ikakumon got slammed by some of my machine guns. As my reward for defeating her again, she gave me a teleport function that allows me to get around the server more easily, but only if we manage to get our 6th seal. But in order to do that, that, I would need a device that is capable of removing the camouflage of a creature called Chameleon, which is where our good old friend Steven Stone comes in, because he's been working on a device that can do exactly that, and is even willing to share its information and capabilities with me. This allowed me to get my very own Chameleon, and while I was at it, I also grabbed Darkmon, Arukenimon, and lastly this literal pile of poo Digimon, Sukamon. Now, if you'd also like to be named after silly creatures like this in any upcoming videos, you can do so by supporting the channel with memberships, which is always highly appreciated. And it's also where all of the nicknames inside of this video are coming from. And I guess it's time to show them off again in a battle against Wynonna, who not only invented but also maintains the teleporting feature inside of the Emerald server. And she'll allow us to use it if we can defeat her. Our first two opponents, Lavogaritamon and Ravemon, easily got defeated by discharges. However, Kokatorimon was part ground type, so it needed a little more oomph to break down. This is where Baihumon's double edge and quick attack combo combined with Datamon's flash cannon did the trick. Bomnanimon would use his electro balls to dismantle this samurai bird, which only left her with Deramon, the grass flying type peacock. And all we needed here was a few sludge bombs from Troopmon to poison and silence it forever, which would see us getting the Feather Seal, which means we only had 2 more to acquire before we could become Digimon's strongest trainer, or at least attempt to become him. And I couldn't think of a better way to prepare than by evolving my poop into a cool-ass monkey called Etemon. Yeah, don't ask me how that works, I have no idea. I also ended up scanning the data for Mummymon and found out that Team Aqua was up to something bad inside of Mount Pyre. And in search of more information about this, I went to the Lily Cove node, one of the last places we'd ever see our rival May. Because after this beatdown I gave her, after razor shelling her Caesarmon, fire punching Kuwagamon, breaking the heart of Guapamon, and finishing off her Ikakumon with leech lives and fell stingers, she would completely leave behind the journey of becoming the strongest tamer. Instead, she would focus her efforts in gathering data for her dad and left the battling aspect of it all for good. So I did the only thing I could do in that moment, wish her luck on this new journey, and went on to evolve some more of my own Digimon. That's how I registered Divermon, Biomon, Birdramon, Hopmon, Monodramon, and Strike-Dramon. We then went to the Free Code Zone, a place where the digital systems have become open-sourced and unmoderated. This means that Digimon can evolve and de-evolve at will while freely rewriting their own data. A breathtaking but dangerous place that reminds us of what the digital world looked like before us humans interacted with it. But I was allowed to enter and used it to gather data of various Digimon. That's how I got Monzaemon, Kuwagamon, Snaimon, Justimon, Starmon, Betamon, and Karatuki Numemon. And with that out of the way, it was time for us to head to the Memory Tower, also known as Mount Pyre. This is a place where deleted or fragmented Digimon are archived so they can rest in peace instead of being recompiled or erased entirely. And what Team Akuma wanted with this place was still unknown to me, but I would find out after I captured my own Digitamamon and Nohemon. Turns out them and Team Magma were here to steal 2 iconic artifacts, the Pyro and Aqua cores. These store the data of some of the strongest Digimon in the entire server, and in the wrong hands they can be reconstructed and used to change the entire server. And so now we need to get them back before they can utilize their power. Luckily for me, Team Magma left behind an access key that could lead us into their evil lair. As I was making my way over there, I also captured a Pixie and Mamemon. We then unsealed their entrance and stormed their base. It was located inside of the deepest parts of the Pyro core reactor, and at the end we found a pool of magma data streams that was being used by Maxi to fully reconstruct Megidramon. Once it was fully stable and awakened, however, it wouldn't listen to him and started rampaging and creating problems around the server, overheating areas that should not be overheated. Maxi blames this entire ordeal on me and straight up attacks me in that moment too. So we fend him off by unraveling his mummy with a few dragon claws, some of my fiery bird's meteor wings, then burned away his Arukenimon, and lastly my Anki would put his bear to sleep so that our mummy could defeat it with 2 more leech bites. After his defeat, Maxi goes in pursuit of Megidramon, but there was another problem that popped up immediately. Archie and Team Aqua stole a submerger that will allow them to go to the deepest parts of the Data Sea, where they plan on using their Aqua Core, and they were able to escape just in front of our noses. So I got myself a Guapamon to try and follow them through these digital streams and ended ended up in the deepest parts of their hideout, where one of their admins, Matt, held me up for even longer. This forced me to defeat his Gesomon and Devi Draymon, and wasted enough time for Archie to escape again, which meant we needed some kind of upgrade so we could follow them under the data streams. And the only way I knew how was to travel to Moss Deep, where I would have to defeat the 7 data terminal masters, Tate and Liza. They would then in turn grant me permission to use my own submersive device. So I built a team that would be able to disrupt their psychic connection that they have. I would get Paildramon, Mega Kabutorimon, Beelzemon, Mega Phantonomon, and War Growlmon. And this allowed me to go up against them fully prepared. But they had a very strong lead of Wisemon and ABmon that managed to one-shot one of my boys on the first turn with Psychic, but we did counter back with a Fire Punch to deal very decent damage to the Steel Alien. On the following turn, I would combine Fire Punch with Behemoth to take both of their team members down, leaving them with Skull Mammothmon as well as Taomon. A few more bashes from Behemoth and a bite later, and those two would also be defeated, which meant we acquired the Telepath Seal and the ability to pursue Archie to the depths of the Digimon world. But more bad news was on the horizon. Team Magma raided a nearby data center and wanted to steal some kind of fuel that would allow them to control their beast they summoned. Luckily, me and Steven were on the scene at the right time and teamed up to take down yet another one of Maxie's plans. Not gonna lie though, Steven only took down one of their Pokemon and ended up being a bullet sponge for the rest of the fight, while my Mega Kabutorimon, Paildramon, and Mega Angemon had to do the rest of the carrying. And just like always, the power of the main character shines through as we foil Team Magma's plans yet again. As a reward, Steven gives me my own submersive device, which we immediately use to go after Archie and his clan. To prepare even more, I added Taomon, Rafflesimon, Superstarmon, Kudamon, and Scorpiomon to the Digidex, and we then traversed our way through the deepest parts of the C4 data cavern. But as usual, we were too late. Archie had already spawned in Neptunemon and is going to use it to clean this world of any corrupted code. But as you may know, nothing can be in balance without some mistakes. So removing all of the corrupted code would mean that something way worse could end up happening that might disrupt the balance of the Emerald server even more. So I challenged him to a battle and washed away his Infernmon with my Superstarmon serves. Beastmon then utilized their strengths against Miotismon, which only left him with his ace Mega Seadramon. So I used the power of the popular pop song Fascination and knocked it down with Rafflesimon's good tunes. With Archie defeated, he still didn't want to listen to my reasoning and activated the Aqua Core anyway. This sent Neptunemon into a rampage as well, and once we headed to the service, we saw that the entire server started to glitch out. The weather was out of control, corrupted data started to show up everywhere, and the place where all of these anomalies were coming from seemed to be in the center of the Sutupolis hub. So the evil teams, myself and Steven Stone, all gathered there as fast as we could, where we would witness the fight against Megidraymon and Neptunemon. As predicted, they were indeed the cause of all of this and needed to be stopped before everything would be corrupted. So he took me to the most sacred place inside of the server, the Primordia Core Chamber. This is not only where I gathered data of two long-forgotten Digimon, Mojimon and Putimon, but also the place where we had our first ever meeting with Prime Warden Wallace. He would not only be the strongest tamer, but would also be responsible for any conflicts that happen inside of this place. And he only knew of one way to stop these ancient beings from fighting and restoring balance to the world. And that was to go in search of the third super ancient Digimon named Goldramon, whose sole purpose was to defend the region from threats like this. But he lived in a hidden, secluded place atop of the Sky Firewall sector. Unfortunately, he has been deactivated for quite some time because his presence alone would sometimes make the region feel too balanced. But now was the perfect time to reboot him so everything wouldn't go under. So me and Wallace traveled there together, woke up Goldramon, and he returned to Sutupolis, and he used its power to send the other two titans far, far away, where they would be deactivated so the peace could be restored to the Emerald server. Maxie and Archie finally realized that what they were doing was totally wrong and promised to both let go of their dreams. With them out of the way, there was only one thing left to do for me: get my last seal and become the strongest Digimon tamer the world has ever seen. And we'd have to defeat Juan, Warden of the Aqua Terminal, responsible for the flow of the Digital Sea. So in order to take him on, I added Ancient Sphinxmon, Dragomon, and Ophanimon to my squad. And then our battle kicked off with my Honeybeemon against his Xiaojamon. First, we'd use attack order 3 times in a row to win this matchup. Then I'd use Sphinxmon's golden barks to boost my own attack, and immediately blasted his next 2 team members back to the bottom of the ocean. And Ancient Cosmon would then come in to cripple down Mega Devimon with extra sensories. Where we weren't able to fully take it down, however, Aphonimon did deliver the final blow with the strike of her Celestic Arrow. This left Juan with Mega Seadramon, which would be de-digitized by Dragomon's Sludge Waves. This victory awarded me with a Flow Seal, so now we can combine all of our 8 seals together to create an encrypted key that will allow us to take on the Data Ascent, a treacherous pathway of corrupted and unstable code leading up to the Tamer League, which can only be entered by the strongest of the strongest, which is where we're going to battle it out to achieve our dream. But we weren't there yet, because along the way to the Data Ascent, I ended up capturing a Syakomon and also a Mermaimon. The latter one made me realize that Digimon creators are absolutely down bad. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have given her these kinds of assets. Anyway, after this, I also did a session of Digivolutions, which ended up giving me Machinedramon, Apemon, Pandamon, Skull Mammothmon, Ogremon, and lastly, Jutomon. I then built my team around all of these new boys and started the challenge of the Data Ascent. But not even 5 steps in and I got pleasantly surprised by Wally. He had somehow, even with this sickness, made it this far in his own Tamer journey and was going to challenge the Tamer League himself, but he needed to know if he was ready to do it. And to measure that, he wanted to have a battle against his longtime rival and role model, me. So I agreed and immediately set the tone of the battle by taking down his Wingdramon with extra sensories. This not only made him nervous but also put him on the back foot, as he was forced to bring out Ancient Sphinxmon. So I swapped out into Jutomon and used this wonderful move called Nether God, which erased it from existence. As for Blossomon, I didn't really know what typing it was, so I brought in Pandamon and used Close Combat just to find out that it's part poison. So we ended up getting drained by all of its vines, which meant Skull Mammothmon had to finish it off by putting it to sleep and eating its dreams. Once that was done, Andromon would get one-shotted by my Machinedramon's Lance Wrath, and his final team member Lotusmon would get defeated by my Omegamon's Double Iron Bash. This loss, however, didn't crush Wally like I expected. He took it as a learning opportunity and vowed to only become stronger from here on out. With these wise words, we left him in the dust and pushed onward, while gathering data on all the mons this place had to offer, which consisted of Tyrannomon and its dark form, but also Allomon. And I just have to say that Tyrannomon is probably my all-time favorite Digimon. I don't know why, but the design of this guy is just peak in my eyes. Not too over the top, cute, but also menacing and dangerous. He's basically just a perfect combination of what I love. Enough glazing this oversized dinosaur because we have just reached the Tamer League. Just outside of it, we ended up finding 3 different tickets that unlock some of the strongest Digimon in the game. However, we can only reach them if we manage to defeat Wallace. And since I wanted to build the most optimal team possible, I evolved my entire box of Digimon to their final forms. So don't take your eyes on the screen because we're going over all of them right here, right now. We got Seraphimon, Metal and Wargreymon, Wargarurumon and Metal Garurumon, Garudamon and Hauhaumon, Hercules Kabutorimon, Magnamon, Wingdramon, Lilithmon and Jagamon, Stephalmon and Raisinmon, Cerberusmon and Sakuyamon, Shakumon and Imperial Draymon, Spinomon, Minervamon, Rapidmon and Mega Gargomon, Hydramon, Wisemon, Cyber Draymon, Ebimon, Valkyremon, Metal Etimon, Gusokumon, Shajamon, Pukumon, Volcano Draymon, Hexablaumon, Skullmeramon, Regalicusmon, Grapleomon, Zanbamon, Mega Seadramon, Lotusmon, Mag Gaugomon, Mirage Gaugomon, Quetzalmon, Master Tyrannomon, Skull Scorpiomon, Puppetmon, Chaos Draymon, Kyupimon and Venusmon, Shellmon and Plesiomon, Ancient Mermaidmon, Marin Angemon, Gesomon, Marine Devimon, Devitamamon, Piedmon, and Gallantmon. After this session, I realized that there was a big number of Digimon that hadn't evolved yet, and that's when I found out about the Digi-Egg evolution method. This is where you apply the elemental powers of a Digi-Egg to a certain Digimon, causing them to turn into something totally different. That's how I got Metal Mamemon and Babamon. However, my Digidex wasn't close to being finished. I still needed around 60 entries before it would be fully completed. So I started teleporting teleporting around the server to areas where I might have missed some. And so on round 2, I found Kura and Poromon, which also got me the entries of Tsunemon, Keramon, Chrysalimon, Infirmon, and Dioboromon, but also Hawkmon, Achillamon, and Sylphimon. And with the use of a Digi-Egg, Hawkmon could also evolve into a different form named Shurimon. I would then head to Route 2 to capture a Kokomon, which I then turned into Lopmon, Toruemon, Antilamon, and Cherubimon. I would also get a second Agumon to evolve into Skull Greymon with the use of a Dark Digi-Egg, and in the deepest parts of the seafloor data cavern, I'd capture the other starter, Bukamon. This would see me turn into Gomamon, Ikakumon, Zudomon, and finally Vikemon. The other starter, Tanemon, was locked somewhere in the Safari Zone, and a pain to get. Not only did it have the lowest encounter rate, but also the lowest catching rate out of everything we could find in here. So if you decide to play this game yourself and you want to complete the decks, I'd highly recommend picking Tanemon as your starter to save yourself some time in the long run. Anyway, I then turned this little plant into Palmon, Ponchomon, Lilymon, and Rosemon. As I mentioned earlier in the video, Vmon has a few different evolution branches. So with the help of Digiex, we managed to evolve into Flamedramon and Rhydramon. We also had a different evolution for Armadillomon, which turned out to be Digmon, and Fambimon would also have 3 more evolution paths that we didn't follow yet. Those were Dokumamon, Yanmamon, and Butterflymon. Chichimon's evolution Hyokomon also had 4 different evolutions, which branched out into Buraimon, Muchomon, and Kokatorimon, Owlmon, and Ravamon, plus Kibimon and Deramon. I also grabbed a second Mojimon, which needed to evolve into Jijimon, and also 4 different Candlemons so we could get Shadramon, Bormon, Lynxmon, and Dark Lizamon. Budmon also had 3 more branches, those being Woodmon and Pumpkinmon, Weedmon and Blossommon, and then it just gets ridiculous with Monmon and Makuramon. Why am I not surprised that there's actually a Digimon that's named Monmon? Anyway, we also got Mame Tyrannomon, Bancho Mamemon, the female variant of Chessmon, Queen Chessmon, but also Prairiemon and Buchimon. There's also 2 pseudo-legendary Digimon we missed out on. The first one was found in Mount Moon and was named Moonmon, which then evolved into Lunamon and Dianamon. The second one, Sunmon, was found inside a fiery path and would turn into Coronamon and Apollomon. Inside of Pacific Lock Town, we also did our first and only trade of the video, which would see us get Kleptomon, which is apparently a community-created creature that isn't actually canon to the Digimon universe. And this only left us with 2 more creatures we could acquire before the league. The first one of these was the legendary Goldramon, who had been awakened on top of the Sky Firewall Tower. After a long, hard-fought battle, we would still be able to acquire its data, which led us to the existence of a very mysterious Digimon. This one was left behind in a very peculiar abandoned laboratory, and even had a warning message attached to it. It stated that its storage system was infected and that we should not access the box to take this thing out. But in search of power, I ignored this trapped Digimon, and after freeing it, it would Digi-evolve into the world-eating Millenniummon. It is said that this thing once died in a furious battle, and the dark soul it possessed was then reborn into Millenniummon. The bands that wrap around its body are like chains that suppress its abilities, and it is foretold that if it ever would be released from this spell, it will rain unfathomable destruction upon the digital world. But now that it's sealed and under my control, I can use its unfathomable power against my opponents in the Tamer League. So from this point, I put all of my strongest Digimon together and challenged the first data protector, Sydney. I knew he was going to use a ton of dark-type Digimon, so I let Apollo scorch the first 4 ones with close combats, flamethrowers, and sunball blasts, until his Minervamon would shut me down with a lance arrow. I would then bring in Millennium and unleash the power of its move Paradox to delete Minervamon's entire existence. After witnessing this, Sydney started to shiver in his boots and let me move on to the second protector, Phoebe. This is where Seraphimon started to go to town, by boosting its own special attacks with Hands of Fate and using the power of the Testament to take down her first 3 Pokemon. However, Kleptomon was able to put a curse on me, which also ended up defeating me on the 4th turn. Luckily for me, her School Bellucimon and Fantonomon would stand no chance against my War Greymon's Giga Blasters and Flare Blitzes. Onto Glacia, I guess, and this is also where I stopped holding back, using the full power of Millennium, which made me able to one-shot each and every one of her Digimon with Paradox. For Drake, I used Apollomon's Close Combats and combined them with Goldramon's Dragon Pulses and Plasma Fists to knock down each and every one of his team members like they were dominoes. There was only one more man standing in my way to become Digimon champion, and that was Wallace. So I menacingly entered his room, and during my slow walk up to him, we challenged the man and got started on the fight of the century. Our battle kicks off with my Dianamon using Ice Burn to send his Cherubimon to the Ice Age. His Valkyriemon would then take revenge by slashing me apart with Fenrir's sword. I then retaliated with War Greymon's Flare Blitzes that not only got me to knock this thing out, but also the next mon, Ophanimon. This is where Wallace would stop playing around and brings in one of the Mythical's Lucimon. But if he's going to start bringing out his strongest creatures, I should just do the same. So I laid waste to the rest of the arena with Millennium's Paradoxes, which like everything else, easily one-shot Lucemon, Seraphimon, and Lucemon X, proving to the digital world that I am their new champion and the strongest tamer that they'll ever see. But my glory was short-lived, because when the professor and May walked in, they reminded me that in order to become the strongest one, I still needed to complete two more things. The first thing was completing the Digidex, and the second one was completing my longtime rival Steven Stone, who is said to be even stronger than Wallace. If we can do that, we can prove ourselves as master of the Emerald server. So I went out and used my special tickets that I got just before the league to get to all of these forgotten digitized islands. The first one was Faraway Island, where I got Lucemon, which is said to be the Digimon that brought order and harmony to the digital world. And on Birth Island, we also managed to capture its ultimate form, Lucemon X. This left me with the two legendary ancient mons, Megidramon and Neptumon, who had been laid to rest inside of the naval core. But with the power I possessed, I knew I'd be able to control them, which would prevent another calamity like we saw before from ever happening. So we gathered their data, which unveiled that there was two more Digimon to be acquired, said to be some of the strongest of them all. But if you wanted to get access to them, you needed to have the strongest bond with two specific Digimon, those being Imperial Draymon and War Greymon. So I spent the next months spending as much time as I could with these guys, and eventually unlocked their full potential, which saw them turn into Paladinmon and Omnimon. But I wouldn't show my fully completed Digidex to the professor yet. I wanted to defeat Steven first, who had nestled himself inside of the deepest parts of the Codefall crater, which is where he assembled his own ultimate team. And when I told him that I was finally ready to become the strongest Digimon tamer, he smiled softly and without saying a word summoned Omekamon. I knew this was an invitation for battle, so I sent out my own Megidramon and immediately melted it down with a single fusion flare. I also wanted to test out Neptumon, but he didn't seem as strong, as his Mega Gargomon managed to blast me with a few Mega Barrages. That's when I sent out the ultimate being, Omnimon, and with his Omni Sword, he would slice through this and the upcoming Digimon like they were butter. The ultimate power of Paladinmon's Omega Blade would also dethrone King Chessmon, and while Lucemon X might not have been able to take down Queen Chessmon, Megidramon and his blue flares would see to it that this battle ended in the victory for me, as Steven's last two team members fell to the ground. With one last smile, he says that I am indeed the strongest now. I knew this meant I had to go to the professor to fully complete mine and his dream. And after showing him my fully completed Digidex, he would be so delighted that the tears started to fall from his face. But deep down it was also sadness, because he knew I was about to leave for my next adventure. And in that same day, I went home, laid in bed, and de-digitized myself for our next Pokemon journey. And that's the full story of how I conquered Digimon Emerald. And time to break your immersion, because this video was so much fun for me to make. I honestly had no prior knowledge to Digimon before this entire ordeal, and learned a lot about what kind of creatures it has. And it's safe to say that they have a lot of really cool ones. I would say if you're a Pokemon fan that doesn't know anything about Digimon, this is a nice way to ease yourself into it. But if you actually want to know stuff about the story, then I would just check out a Digimon game. Anyway, I give this game like a 7 out of 10 because I had to make the entire story up up myself, but besides that, the Digimon themselves have been implemented perfectly, which is definitely the main thing you want from a game like this. And lastly, I want to thank the members of the channel who make videos like this possible. Your support means the world to me. And as always, people, I've been Zwiggo, and I'll see you guys in the next one.